Right, but we need to start the camera. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Norway, right? Where were you? North Carolina? Where? North Carolina? Oh, one of my best friends just moved there. Where? It's like a mini city that's being built. Oh. He sold his house on Long Island. Yeah.
It's in the link, the
And
call information.
Lovely. And took about a third of what he got for his house on Long Island.
Did you text it to
Bought a
me?
house in North Carolina. And it sounds beautiful.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Lake and all.
Yeah, it's very nice.
What town were you in?
Asheville.
Asheville.
We were also in Chapel Hill. We went to Reedsboro. We kind of traveled across this. We went down to DC.
This is Mike Decker, this is Elise.
We spent
If you
90
wanna
days in
Give
Washington.
her his number,
And
Just ask
then
him,
we went to
because we're on
Chapel
the
Hill.
recording now, so we don't want
And then
to.
we stopped in Greensboro at the Civil
His number.
Museum.
You can't tell, but my hearing was bad.
Bring it.
Oh, Lisa, can you just tell me what your number is? I'm handing it to somebody on the.
No. His number to her.
Oh, okay. All right, hold on.
Oh,
Hi, I just.
Hold on a
need your
minute.
number.
All right, you're being recorded. Barbara,
hi,
Barbara.
I'm Mitzi.
you're being,
Hold on a minute.
we need to start the meeting.
Yep.
So, Barbara, we need you here.
Yes.
Okay, I'm just going to.
So like he's doing it.
So I'm on.
You see my record?
Can you straighten that out?
Hopefully. If it's still not the public,
Seems good.
I'll see you on the 28th. Thanks for calling.
Well, due to some technological difficulties, we're delaying the opening meeting. It is now 4:09 PM on December 13th. I'm going to open the meeting, call to order the meeting of the City of Kingston Ethics Board. We have recorded minutes, I believe, from the last meeting. I don't know if you had a chance to review them. And if you have had a chance to review them, if there's a motion to accept the minutes as recorded.
I'd like to remember them.
I was not at the meeting. And I did not have the minutes already to or submitted for you. I've not seen it.
They're recorded on.
They're recorded.
Okay. So if each member could, I just spoke with the clerk and she gets the minutes, the recorded minutes and the transcripts. So we can go on prior to our meeting
Okay.
and review them. So that we're prepared to vote on it, make a motion.
I read them, but I don't recall them all enough.
So it appears as though we're going to have to carry them over to the next meeting. And at the next meeting, review and vote on last meeting's minutes and this meeting.
Okay.
Did we receive any new complaints? There are none that I'm aware of.
Not officially.
Okay. I'm not sure what that means officially.
No one officially complained to me as a member of this committee.
Okay. So is that we don't have any? Because I don't know what that means officially or unofficially.
I guess the answer is no.
Okay. So there's no new complaints that we're aware of.
No.
So we have a complaint that we're reviewing. However, the meeting today, in the absence of our legal representative, I don't plan, unless there's any reason to go into an executive session without legal guidance. And at the next meeting, we'll pick up wherever we left off. And so we have one outstanding complaint. We have no new complaints. Mr. Decker, who's trying to get into the meeting, is documenting all of the things that we've done throughout the year, the complaints that we've received and resolved, and any of the actions that we've taken or suggested to common council, to the mayor, to whoever. And then with that, we want to take a review of the year in preparation for the annual letter. We have to do an annual report to the mayor and to the common council, which we've done every year. And, we reported to the mayor every year, and then it was distributed throughout the system. And so this year, we're going to directly give it to the mayor and the common council, so that we're sure that both have received it.
Alan,
Yes.
just so you know, Michael Decker is on the line. He is on Zoom.
Oh.
He called in.
Hello, Mr. Decker.
Greetings.
Thank you. So, as of now, I'm Alan Nason. I am the chair of the Ethics Commission, and we have with us
Charlotte Adamus.
And Barbara Sarah.
and
Michael Decker.
Michael Decker. So we have a full board meeting. What we were looking at, Mike, is the minutes. People have not had a chance to review the minutes or don't remember exactly what they said. So we're urging everyone to review the minutes that Elisa Tinty, the clerk, has reviewed as in both the video of the recording and in the written minutes that accompany the transcript of those minutes. And as we talked about new complaints, which we're not aware of any, is there any awareness, Elisa or Mr. Decker, of new complaints?
There is nothing has been handed into my office.
Right. And then we have one existing complaint, and we talked about that would need to be discussed in an executive session if it were to be discussed. But at this point, without legal counsel available, we're going to hold that over until our next meeting, when we will have legal counsel to advise us on all the legalities with it. And then we came to a review of the year to date. And have you been able to list any of the actions or recommendations of the ethics board, Mr. Decker?
Yes, I have some of those actions that we want to include in the letter. Are you going to draft that in a meeting, or do you want me to send those to you?
I don't know that it matters.
sending it pretty quick to, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see it in writing, and then, you know, I don't know how many complaints there were. In any of the records. And then, once we draft the letter, then we can, share it with the mayor and the alderman at large for their distribution amongst the county council as they determine.
Sure. The only thing I need is, an update is if there's been any more financial disclosures turned in and who is delinquent yet.
It was my understanding that, I believe all of the financial disclosures were turned in. Is that correct, Elisa?
As far as I know, they were. I don't know what ones are missing that he's referring to.
Well, there was a list of those that had not complied in the initial date. And then the clerk's office sent out the reminders, and I believe everyone who was still active as an employee or a member of a board or an elected official had responded by that time.
Well, I
Yes,
think
that's
Sandy-
correct.
We have what?
Okay, so that was complete in July then.
That in April, but not in June or July when they,
I just don't recall that we got a confirmation about that.
okay.
Well, we didn't as a board. You may have heard something, but
Yeah, we made a list of those that were,
yeah, there was only a small number.
right.
And
Well, what's a small number and what's a lot?
right. There were maybe max, yeah, there were, I remember the figure of 10, and I don't remember if that got knocked down a little bit, certain things were resolved, but I don't recall being in a meeting where it was determined that that there were none.
Well, there were a few that were no longer part of a required group to
Okay.
submit, whether they were no longer on a board or,
Yeah.
and then I believe the others did submit, at least that's my recollection. I can
Yeah.
speak with the clerk's office.
No,
at another date.
Alan,
Yeah,
I believe it whittled down to 4, and yes, they have all been handed in.
yeah, that was my recollection, is that of the 7 or 10 or whatever it was, that it ended up being whittled down to 3 or 4 or 5 and 4. That was probably most accurate.
Okay.
And
Great.
that those were, but we can double check that, and, but I believe that to be accurate. Thank you, Elisa, I appreciate it. Let me write that, review disclosures. And there's a couple of things on the agenda for the coming year. Some have been on the agenda. We've made recommendations on multiple occasions to common council to review the ethics code and consider if they want to, if that's what they wanted to say, or if they wanted to make revisions. And we've done that and presented it, and we've made some recommendations and examples of some of our concerns and about whether or not that's what's intended. And they've listened, but we haven't gotten any changes. So, it's been suggested that we consider, proposing a revision that we would like, that we think best fits it. So I think I sent, everybody, some copies of some other municipalities and what their code of ethics looks like, and they all look a little different.
Right.
So that's one, if you would look at them and, say what you think. And the expectation is that you're not a legal expert, and we're not, and we're not the lawmakers who make that decision. But if we want that to happen, then we're gonna have to initiate that. or accept it as it is. So if you guys could review that over the holidays and come back with a nice Christmas, no. And that we could decide if it's something that we're capable of undertaking, and or a general recommendation of the structure of the code, that would be great.
And what about the conversation we had about getting some input or some instruction or look over how our code it works and whether we could improve it?
From the common council.
Yeah.
They've read the letters, and I've presented it to them a few different times, once prior to the more recent election, and then after, a few times, I don't remember, it's 2 or 3 times. And they present it as though we're of value, and that they're very interested in it, but they have limited time also. We haven't heard back from them on that, so, it could be a while. And we may want to look at those other municipalities, the other codes of ethics, and say what we like about each one of them, and maybe we put one together and submit it to them, not for their, to see if they want to approve that or if they want to adjust it. Because I would think that right now that the ethics board knows more about the ethics code and the problems that you may see in addressing it and what you want it to mean, than anyone, because people don't do this.
Right.
And employees, I don't believe, in general, I'm sure some do, but I don't believe every employee sits down and studies the ethics code. Nor should they, which brings us to the next thing, which would be a handout of a quick and easy understanding of the code that we could give to employees. And I don't know where we would be with that.
Yeah, we had, Alan, if you recall, we had inquired with the council, like what was their training that they provided. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think their response was they left it at basically the supervisor's level for each department. So, I mean, that's a concern in itself, because are they all reviewing the same thing? So for continuity,
Right.
but I think the city owes it to their supervisors to provide them the guidance that they should present, if that's the format they wish to do.
And I think that within the code, it falls to us to develop a handout or
Sure.
An easy to follow guide, basic guide, for employees. And, like if you think it's wrong, don't do it, Other than that, one of my concerns with that is the discussions that we have, the confusion. When we discuss, we're not in agreement. We end up getting there, but it's multiple discussions over multiple meetings and multiple reviews and opinions of legal counsel before we get there.
Right, it's not cut and dry.
So I don't, right now, I don't know how you reduce that to, a 3-page brochure or something that you give to,
Right, and the problem becomes, this is something that I was thinking about, is that the code is a legal document. And if we create a guide and our interpretation isn't consistent, we could actually sow more confusion. I almost think that the handout should be more like, what is the point of having an ethics board? What is the point of handing in your financial disclosure forms? Why does this matter? Like, how is this a part of good government? As opposed to trying to give So I think, you can run into legal trouble if you're interpreting code that isn't consistent with the actual code, So someone could say, well, your handout says this, but my lawyers looked at the code and that is not a legitimate interpretation. So I think it's more that we want people to comply because they understand the spirit of why an ethics board?
Yeah.
Why have this? I also feel like my concern is that the Common Council, I would want them to sign off on saying, yeah, go ahead and do this work. I just feel like to go ahead, we're not really getting any traction with the Common Council in terms of support. And I'm hesitant to move forward until we get a commitment from the Common Council that this is work that they want to be done. A, B, that we get this training that Corporation Council was speaking of. And I wanted, that's a new thing and that's great, but when and how is it going to happen? And then, as Barbara mentioned, going through code, I've looked at several codes and they're very complicated. And I do not feel that I have the training to write code. It's not it's a whole different thing than sitting down and negotiating and discussing and interviewing. That I feel competent to. But to me, a code is a very highly specific part of the law that there are people who are good at this, that this is what they do, this is their language. And so it's like taking a beginning French student and putting her into an advanced class and saying, I want you to, translate, the Constitution. That's just, to me, it seems like not something that a volunteer board does, but that a city that's serious about its ethics code hires somebody to do this, and then we're there to be part of the discussion, but I don't feel personally competent to that.
Okay.
That's my,
No, I hear you. I can answer that the ethics training,
yeah.
and while some of us have had various training in ethics, we're talking with Nikon about a municipal ethics training. And Corporation Council is trying to, or their office is trying to arrange something for the near future that would involve at least the ethics board, if not other individuals. And I think the more the merrier.
Yeah, as Mike said, supervisors, right, would be great to be involved in that.
And then, I think that if we revise, and we can, I also am not opposed to asking the aldermen at large to come and, get their opinion on if they want us to do that. If we undertake this, will they, our reviewing, revising, making a recommendation does not make it law.
Right.
So would they be willing to take that and then they'd still have to look at it, throw it out, accept it, review it and revise it in a committee, pass it in a large body of the Corporation Council, however they need to do that. But I really would hope that at some point we could get something for the employees and the officials to guide them.
Sure.
And, or, when they have a question, to contact us. And I've had one person do that, but, and it was an elected official about, would they be in violation or not? And they would not have, but it was nice that they were concerned enough to ask that. Because part of what I'm looking at is the city has a lot of good employees. And a code, and it needs to be carefully crafted. I don't want, I wouldn't want people who are really abusing the system or scamming the system or to get away with it. We haven't seen a lot of that, or almost none of that, in our setting. And I believe that most employees come to work, they want to do a job and make a living for them and their family, and have a good life and go on home, and they're not looking to financially gain, you know, their financial gain is their employment. And I think a lot of our board members want to do, I think all of the board members, you know, no, you're not getting paid, no one's getting paid, not just this board, all the other commissions and board, you know, in general, they don't get paid. So they're donating their time, and it's good for the city, and it's good for them because they like what they do, and their time is valuable and they're giving of it. So, and our elected officials, whether I agree with them or disagree with them, or partially, or which, you know, I never agree with anybody all the time anyway, but even if it's, I don't believe that they're bad people or they're trying to get over. I think that they run for an office for whatever reason they do, and they believe in what they're doing, and they say it, and people either vote for them or don't. And so when they get elected, they're trying to do what they said they were going to do. So when the elected officials and the commissioners and the employees are trying to go about their daily business, I wouldn't want a code to be used as a weapon. I don't want it weaponized against good people trying to do good things, and they get caught up because of some nuance. So whatever code we do, I'd like there to be some reasonable judgment built in.
Do you think our code doesn't have that now? I mean, did you see examples of codes that were more beneficent, less?
Well, you know, our code is very restrictive. Starting with what are the meanings of words? What's the definition of an action by a public official? You don't know. I mean, you guys do, but prior to that being here, I doubt you would know that. I didn't. And we had outside legal counsel explain that to us, and it was like, what? Didn't make sense. But that's the kind of things that, you know, do we want a more plain speak code, or one that as it is? It's not, I'm not saying that it's a bad code. We just need to know if that's what we want.
Right.
And if, and what is it that we want, and how does the verbiage, what's the wording need to be?
Right.
To reflect that, and then how do we make sure that we protect employees and others who are trying to do the right thing, and not be for political reasons or any other reasons, or not liking somebody held, you know, have their feet held to the fire when it's not reasonable.
So I think in terms of the verbiage, and I hear what you're saying, I mean, it's always for me, reading legal documents is reading a foreign language. And it is very difficult. They are not written for lay people. And we had an interesting experience recently where we talked to our lawyer about a legal document that we were creating. And I said this exact same thing. I said, why are they so difficult to understand? I have a master's degree, I'm an educator, I still have trouble. And she said, because the language comes specifically from case law. And so that's the thing, you know, because these documents serve, even though they serve a legal process, and as non-lawyers, we are not privy to that language. It is not our arena. And yet, because they are the basis of what could end up being, let's say, a lawsuit, those codes are connected, the foundation is case law, and the language comes from that. And so once we move out of that, I don't know where we stand in terms of protecting or not protecting people, and that's the problem. So I'm sure that this is a real problem. You have a volunteer ethics board that we're not attorneys. We're expected to adhere to a code written by attorneys for that purpose, right? To protect the city, protect employees against legal action. And yet, once you remove that document and you write it in plain English, you've disconnected from case law, and then where do you stand? So that's why I'm saying I don't know, proceeding without an attorney who specializes in this specific language, I am hesitant to move forward on rewriting anything, even though I hear exactly what you're saying. I couldn't agree more. It makes it very difficult for everybody involved, but I don't know how you get out of it.
So we're going to have, or they're scheduling a Nikon ethics training. And Corporation Council has experience with this in a larger city. And as may the Nikon. And then what we revise or what we present is what we think, if there should be amendments or not. If we think there should be amendments, what would they be? That doesn't make it so. It would then be reviewed by the attorneys. It would then be reviewed by Corporation Council and Common Council. And so we would not be able to make it law or
Right.
code.
Right.
That would be up to them, and they could look at it and reject it completely, in part, or revise it, or review it and say, or, and I'm good with this, or say, no, the existing code is what we want. So whatever they want, they're the people who are charged with the approving the code. So they've approved the existing code, not necessarily the present group, but Common Council has approved that code. Our request to them to review it and revise it if they think it needs to change, I think is what we needed to do. However,
But have they said yes?
no,
Okay,
they haven't, they've listened.
but
So I think, we could ask the aldermen at large to poll or whatever they do with Common Council, and then advise us on if they want us to do
right.
it, or if they want to.
So to me, that's square one.
Right, so we'll get the ethics, Nikon ethics training in place, because that will, it's a refresher course if you've already had the ethics training. If not, then it's foundational course. And then we will ask the aldermen at large what, if they want us to do, because you're saying, well, why do it if they, they're not even gonna listen to it, so. And then, once that's decided, we can start on the employee guidance document. Because if we keep the existing code, then we will build it off of that.
Right, so,
And if it's gonna be revised, then we'll build it off of that revision.
and again, I would caution interpretation of either the revision or the current. Because really, once we start taking language out and giving our own language to it, we open ourselves up to a gap between code and our interpretation. I'm suggesting, and again, I would run this by council,
Yes,
that the guidance we give people is really just a general sense of what is ethics.
Right,
What is ethical, what is good government, what is an ethical, and maybe give some scenarios, this is an example of a complaint, or this is how you complain, or how is a complaint handled?
and some clear not to do stuff. What is a gift and how much of a gift can you,
There you go.
Yeah,
So very,
you receive.
exactly,
and
what
if you-
makes a gift?
and, if, do not take a gift over this amount,
Yeah,
even if offered, because here's,
yeah, but very, yeah,
Um,
exactly.
And that's all in writing.
yeah, those are in codes, the code about, I don't remember the exact dollar amount, if it's $50 or 75, but,
75 is what I read.
what is it, Mike?
75 is pretty much the standard, even in like business code of conducts.
Yeah, in most places it is that. I'm not sure of the city, but probably is that. Or we can recommend that it's that if it isn't. But those kinds of simple things,
That I would agree with.
do not accept gifts
Yeah,
on
that's,
behalf of the city, or do not, because there's a lot more to it. The city
yeah,
can't
what
accept
is a
something.
gift? What are examples of a gift? Who in your household, or who is, the whole discussion of who is part of this, your partner, your,
Well, that's the disclosure forms also, which we will, it's been suggested that we look at and say, well, what do we really need in there?
yeah,
And so that's something that we can look at other communities also about, what do they have in there?
yeah,
Is all of the stuff that we have in there necessary? Because there's a resistance on people. This year, we got, I believe, full conformance
but
with
it took,
that. But it takes time and well, you know what, it'll probably always take time, but, because that's how it happens. But we, members of this board themselves have expressed
yeah,
difficulty in understanding the disclosure and what they needed to do.
Agreed.
And so, my hope is that we look at that and we come up with a way that it's easy to understand. Because, it's a disclosure form for the city about conflicts of interest. But it's primarily financial in nature. So, do you want to expand on that? Do you want to contract that? How much information do you need to know? Do you need to know what that person, that employees or board members, husband, wife, where they own real estate, what do you need to know?
well, they're on a planning board, yes. They're on the zoning board, yes. I do think,
Do you?
I
Okay.
do.
All right, yeah. I mean, is it owned within the city, or do they own a place on Cape Cod, or what's the retirement,
In the city, right. If somebody owns real estate in the city and they're making decisions with regard to planning and zoning,
then they need to do,
they
that
do
needs to be
need to
disclosed.
disclose. Absolutely,
All right.
absolutely.
And what does that need to be disclosed on the form each year, or should that be disclosed when an issue comes up? And should everybody in the city that has to do with the disclosure form need to disclose that?
I would think that the standard is prior disclosure, because waiting until an issue comes
Okay.
up can make things very murky.
Okay, no, I'm not opposed to it at all, but
Yeah.
we just need to have that discussion and
Yeah,
put that recommendation in mind. So how much of that, and how do we make it so that it's easier for people to understand and complete it?
And not just the people who are on this table, the people who ask us to explain what's happening.
Right. Yeah, well, and there are people who do struggle with it.
yeah, it is a complicated form, and the language is, again, it's written by attorneys. I understand that, but it does need to be, that's a document that needs to be in plain English, for sure. Because you are asking people, I mean, I had to call my accountant and ask questions like, what is this? I had no idea what some of the terminology meant. That shouldn't be. Or if the terminology needs to be in there, then it needs to be explained.
So that it's understandable for the average person.
Hello, yes, absolutely. This is what we mean by la la. Here is an example.
agree. We can, all express, what we've seen on those forms submitted, various information that's not really relevant.
Mm-hmm. And Mike, we could explain why something is relevant, right? Why do we need to know that? I mean, sometimes, I'm imagining that people look at this and think, why is that anybody's business?
Right. But to me, it's evident that most people don't understand the form because the responses are not consistent, and some people are clearly offering too much information, I think.
Yeah.
Some may not be offering enough as a result as well. We just don't know that. Yeah.
That's right. But we do know, because of the inconsistent results and our own experience, that the form needs help.
It does.
Yeah.
So, and to summarize some of the things that we've reviewed is the annual report. So we'll compile a report, and we'll get it to the mayor and the alderman at large. Because it has to go to both common councilmen. And then we will continue to review and discuss the ethics code ongoing.
And await approval from common council.
We'll ask the alderman at large for her input, guidance on, do they want to do it in council, or do they want us to do it?
And if so, do we have an attorney? Will they authorize the work doing it hand in hand with an attorney who knows?
Right. Well,
ethics codes?
we have corporation counsel who has lived in that world. I don't know, she may be available to help us with that, or they may want us to do something else.
Yeah.
And then the annual disclosure forms, they're coming up again.
Yeah.
So do we want, probably not for this coming year, but for the following year, to review them and review other places and say,
Yes.
what information do we actually need, and make it, or revise it to make it simpler so that people can fill it out without scratching their heads. I don't know, did I do that right? And then to develop an employee guidance document following our discussion with the alderman at large, if it's keep it as it is, we can move forward with it. If it's let's revise it first, then we kind of wait. And maybe we can send out a guidance document about the basic stuff that we know and how to contact us.
Okay.
Because they need a place to go, department heads need a place to go.
Right.
Where do they go? If there's an accusation. And, the more people are in a decision-making position, the more vulnerable they are to accusations, and the exposure for possible ethics violation increases as your authority increases.
Although pretty much everybody who's come to us has not been a department head.
Right.
Hello, what are you looking for?
Tree commission.
No, not here. This is the ethics board. Maybe on the other side?
Maybe.
Yep, just go through the common
Yeah.
council,
Yep, thanks.
So, we've covered a lot.
But I think the thing to do would be to make a realistic timeline, like what needs to happen first. And then once we get approvals, kind of create a schedule for the year, what we'd like to do when. So that we have, specific targeted times to get the work done. And then
work backwards in terms of what needs to happen to make that done. So in other words, if we want to have revised disclosure forms for next February, what will we need to do to get that in place by next February? So X number of weeks for research, X number of weeks for writing, X number of weeks for review by council, and then just getting the material written up, typed up, and distributed. So we have to think, so goals need to have a specific timeline with actions along the way. So otherwise, we're just saying, oh, we want to do this by, but we really need those.
So some of the things, and we can discuss dates, the annual report, that's number one. We must have it to the mayor's office and common council's office, I believe by January 15th.
I remember
So we have a month.
Uh-huh.
I'd like to get it done in a week or so and let it be somebody edit it, because you guys are good writers.
Are you gonna write it?
I usually do, yeah.
Yeah.
And then, people review it and say, how you made that up, we didn't do that, or, that's wonderful, we did this, but we also did this. And, then, second is I can reach out to the aldermen at large, and ask for input on their interest in us reviewing and revising. Because I have a request for us to do that, but it didn't come from them. So I want it to be a collaborative effort. I don't want us, as you said, we do it and they don't want to hear it. And it's not welcomed, yeah, which is, I don't want to waste your time. So, an exercise in futility. So, if the alderman at large says, yes, we really want to do it, we don't have time, we're caught up in running the city.
Great.
We can do that and we can loop them into our progress as we move along with Corporation Council.
Do we need approval to revise the disclosure forms to begin that process? I would think that might be a common council, like at the same time.
We can ask the same.
To me, the first step is approval. Approval. Do they want us to go ahead and do it?
Do you want us to do that for
Do
the alderman at
the-
large?
Right, so code for the ethics code and for the disclosure form, once we get approval, then we can create, everything else is just
So
out there.
the annual reports first. The second is the alderman at large and whether they want, what they want us to do and what they want to not do.
Yeah.
And then, so if they want us to not do, and we don't do, if they want us to do, then I think what we would hit is the ethics code first.
Yes.
And the annual disclosure afterwards or later. Or each of us could do some part of something, and then bring it together, later. And then, so that could be, I could reach out to her this month. I don't know when her response
Yeah.
will be.
It would be, I think, important to have as much lead time as possible if we could get an answer, let's say by February 1.
Yeah.
Realistically.
The alderman at large has been supportive of us and has represented our request to committees within the common council after they expire. They expire after a certain amount of time and has to be resubmitted. And she did that for us. So she's been very supportive, I think. And the employee guidance document.
Would be coming from that. So if they choose not to do it,
But
not for review, we could still make a document
We have
based
a-
on the
right.
existing code.
we have an obligation to develop an employee guidance document.
Right,
So I think we could do that, start on that now, about
But-
what, about the generalities, the
the
gifts.
generalities, but
you
if
know.
our code changes,
If the code changes, those general changes won't change.
Okay.
You know, the gifts are, it's also a municipal law, it's, you know, municipal codes, it's things you can't do, you know what I mean? And when in doubt, go to your supervisor or call the ethics board or whatever. But there, you know, there are some general standard things don't do. And we can look at that and write stuff down, bullet points, whatever, and flesh it out. We don't need anything, you know, handouts next week or next month, but, you know, the sooner the better that we could give them to people.
One of the things I think we really need to do, personally, I'm involved in it, that is, how do we get more candidates for this board? It seems important. I'm gonna be away for a few months.
Well, there's, the ethics board has 5 seats.
I know.
So right now, there's 4 people. There's 1 open seat. And
Well, I'm gonna be away.
yeah, and well, you have to cancel your away time.
I see.
Yeah,
And then
I've
what-
asked the mayor to appoint. And he's working on it, he's trying. There's a requirement about the numbers of persons from specific political parties,
I understand.
which is wonderful in a large city, but creates some difficulty locally. I mean, first of all, how many people want to be on the ethics board? And it sounds like I'll do that, but it can be, there's some really tough, difficult decisions that have to be made that affect people's lives. And in our discussions, we haven't agreed, which is good. I think it's good. Wouldn't want to rubber stamp, I'll say, no, let's do it. I think the disagreement and then the discussion that follows the disagreement is where the magic happens. That's the beauty of it, is it becomes, I don't view this as a political board, I think no politics doesn't play a part. We may all have our own opinions initially, but as we discuss things out, the reality of ethics, code, and law kind of presents itself. Whether we like it or not, something doesn't mean whether or not it's an ethics violation. And we've been able to get through that. So he is looking to find that.
Another point on that position is that the code calls for it to be a city employee. At least there to be one, so that's kind of restricted to the open seat right now.
Right, that's the question, is that the municipal code, not Kingston's, but the municipal code requires that one of the people be the employee. You're right, Mike. However, the attorneys general has opined that that's not necessary. So, what does that mean? Well, I don't know if.
I think they can strike it in the code, but that's something they need to look at,
Right, so, but that's something that, between the common council and the mayor, that's their role, not ours. I didn't appoint anyone to this committee.
One other topic while I'm thinking of it.
To this committee, the mayor and the common council appoint people to the committee, to the board. And, so that's not, we can request it.
So are we stuck then, Mike? We don't have, we don't really know what the final answer is in terms of whether or not it has to be a city employee or not?
The way the city code is written, it has to be, but, that's one of the things that we've asked them to review. It doesn't need to be like that. They elected when they wrote the current code to include that. So we've asked them to review that.
Oh, I see. Okay. So it's in the city's code and the city wrote it in.
I don't know if it's in code, is it?
It is in the city code, yes.
So if it's in the city code, don't we have to abide by that until they write it out of the code?
This is true, but that's why we've asked them to review it. Initially, our thought was that the reasoning behind it was that was the administrative element of the board. In other words, access to City Hall, access to things that we need as an operating board.
Yes.
But we've since learned very much not the case. So that's when we've kind of said, does it really need to be an employee at that point?
So that's something though that we don't have any control of. That's going to be common council and the mayor, and their legal advisor is going to be corporation counsel.
So what do we want? I mean, it seems to me that it should be a city employee because otherwise, how do we have access
Access to,
to getting files and things, you know, like, let's say, collecting the disclosures or taking minutes and.
Well, we essentially do that with the clerk's office and corporation counsel.
Okay, so we.
I can't say that we've always been able to appreciate that relationship in the past, but we do now.
So do you, the two of you have the experience that Barbara and I don't have. Do you think it's worth advocating changing that part of the code?
Which part?
The part that requires it to be, the fifth member to be a city employee?
well, I think that that's not ours. That's,
I know it's not ours, but if you had your druthers, what would it be?
well, here's a pros and cons that, as I've experienced.
Uh-huh.
We had no one initially
Mhm.
when I first started. And then we had an employee appointed in the second or third grouping of the ethics board.
Okay.
And that person did afford us a lot of access.
Mhm.
And that person served as the secretary for the board. And one of the things that was problematic was that that person, as an employee of the city and as the secretary for the board, was responsible for the minutes, was responsible for keeping of the documents, was responsible for a lot of things that they did not want to be.
Right.
And they weren't paid either.
That's a city thing. If they're required to be at the meeting, then they are paid, I would think.
Even as a member of this board.
If a person, if they're an employee and I could be completely wrong, again, a legal issue, labor issue. If they're an employee here and they're made to, you know, you're assigned to the
So
committee,
they
to the
keep
board,
paid.
and they're told you're gonna be here from 4 to 6, whatever. How do you not pay them?
Hmm.
I don't, and that, I don't, one way or another, doesn't matter to me, that, whether they get paid or not. I mean, I'm in favor of people getting paid if they're working, but, and that would certainly be work for them. And then we haven't had it, so, and then we've had it where a secretary is assigned, and what the code says is that we will be assigned a secretary.
And we have not been for months.
Well, there's concerns and issues in terms of where do you get them from, you know? So each one there are issues attached to each, and there's pros and cons.
And even so, since then, the COVID days, we now have electronic file. So things have changed again. So
Yeah. And so do we have the secretary that's assigned to us and an employee that's not part of the board, the secretary, and the employee who is?
But right now we have not.
Because the employee, I believe, is there to represent the viewpoint of employees of the city who may be brought up on allegations of violations.
But does the employee then have to be a member of a particular political party? Or that doesn't apply?
There is no, you must be a member of a political party. I believe what it says now, that no more than 2 members can be part of the same political party.
We're different parties already.
So yes, that restriction would apply to the employee as well, the way it's written.
Okay, thanks, Mike. All right, so essentially, okay,
So it's very restrictive and, you know, you can see that it's restrictive.
yeah,
And I think the general consensus is that an employee does not want to sit on the ethics board. So to field that position, if there's not specific cause or reason that they put it in there, then I think it should be considered as maybe, you know, it may be an employee, but it may also not be.
so whose job would it be then to rewrite that part of the
Common council.
Common Council?
So we've asked them to do that, and that's the letter that, you know, so these are some of the things in that letter that we're going to sit down and have a conversation with them now so that we can get tangible responses, hopefully, because
Yeah, I don't know that we even discussed that necessarily specifically with
Yeah.
them, but, you know, those are things for conversation about that. You know, if I'm an employee of the city and, I work for one of the departments and I'm on this board and someone else on it that an elected official or department head that I don't like is up here, or that I do like. Do I want to be the one making a decision about them? You know, that's negative?
Right, this is problematic.
And it should, you know, that no one would know what their vote is or anything of their discussion. But, you know, is that uncomfortable? Maybe, maybe not, I don't know.
But what if that department person is accused?
Right.
Then that person has to recuse him or herself.
Could have to.
They have to.
You know, but the thing is that this is municipal code, it isn't Kingston, I mean, it didn't start in Kingston. It's held in many municipalities.
So it's a state code?
It's the, I forget the number of code, municipal code, but,
47.9.
no, that's the city code.
Right.
But
There's-
did
Oh, well-
the city take that from the state code?
Yes. That's
So-
where.
All ethics boards have the same requirements?
No.
Municipal, guidance for municipal boards. So we'd have to.
But when I said no, I meant in perspective of the person being an employee, I should say, clarify that. Not, yes, they all are the same municipal.
So every town and city in New York State is dealing with the same difficulty in terms of having to fill, let's say, their ethics board with a person who must be an employee?
That's crazy.
Yes and no, because the other thing about the attorneys general, opining that it's not necessary. What does that mean? I don't know what that,
So that's a state attorney general.
that's, I would assume that it wouldn't, yeah,
The state attorney general said it's not necessary.
right. And which state attorneys general? I don't know,
Well, it'd have to be New York, because this is state law.
but which one?
There's only one AG.
Now, how many have there been?
Yeah, but current law is always based on it doesn't get revised unless somebody actually.
Right, so
So
say
somebody-
when Spitzer was, if he did that,
Yeah, but if nobody revised it after.
Then it's-
yeah,
it's
it would
still in
have to
effect.
become- It's always still in effect until somebody revises it.
Right.
Yeah.
But-
Doesn't
but
matter.
he opined, if it were him, whoever it was, does that change law?
It only changes the law if it's contested and somebody rewrites it, but again, my understanding is that,
Well, these are issues that we're not able to answer.
but we should, and the thing
I don't
is,
think we're not qualified.
right, but we
Yeah,
need to know the answer.
Right, so this is something when we have our training with Nikon,
Right, we need.
we
to
can
know.
ask them about, well, what does this mean?
Right.
And now, in terms of the assigning people to the board, it's not us.
I
We don't
understand
get to
that,
pick them.
but we are inhibited our work has been inhibited. We have been without a fifth member for a year and a half.
At least that, right?
Yeah, because Barbara and I were hired in July a year and a half ago.
And was Robert here then?
No,
So it's been more than that.
okay, so longer than that, yes, longer than that. And the question of, I mean, do you feel we need a secretary? Does it feel dysfunctional to you to not, what isn't getting done without a quote unquote secretary? Not talking about a fifth member, but what is not getting done without a secretary?
Well, we have had a member of the clerk's office.
I know Mirabelle was here.
Well, Maribel, and at least provide some of those functions. And so that would be in a discussion that could happen, how much of those functions
Mhm.
can she be reasonably expected to continue to do? Because we're not the only board.
Right, right. And so the question is, right, I don't,
So we would have that discussion with the Alderman at large, and then with the clerk's office to say, what can be done, and with corporation counsel. These are all, multiple points that would need to weigh
because I
in.
assume that Mirabelle was being paid for her time to be here with us.
That's my assumption, yes.
So clearly the city is willing to pay somebody to do that work.
And it's in their code, so yeah, the city hasn't backed out on being willing to do any of it.
Yeah, except we haven't had a secretary assigned to us since the summer.
Right.
So I guess that's my question again, what is the function of a secretary and
But-
what is
and-
not being done?
And in that time,
Mhm,
since the secretary left,
mhm.
the clerk's office has pretty much fulfilled that role.
Okay,
However, it's funneled up to the clerk.
right, so how does Elisa feel about that?
Right, and that's something that a discussion could be had offline, I would think, with whoever the powers to be. Possibly could be involved.
Because I don't want to add, in other words, if the city is obligated to have a secretary for this board or any board, I just don't want to continue to go on assumptions and loading up work on a department that may already be overloaded. And the sense I get is, if a person is supposed to be specifically assigned and then just giving the office more work,
Mhm.
is just gonna create
Yeah.
unnecessary
So those are
tension.
things that we can have, conversations we can have, possibly with the alderman at large, who makes those, who governs, oversees the body that makes those rules. And,
And Alan,
yes,
there's one other point, I think we should discuss and maybe include in the letter, and probably clarification for the external counsel and approval process. Because based on who is involved, we've already run into that in the past, how it gets approved.
It's approved. Mike, how what gets approved?
The external counsel. First, we have differences on when we believe it's required. So we'd like some clarity there. And then, when we request it, last time we had, it didn't go straight through. So we need that approval process clearly defined.
and we can talk with Nikon about clarification of that also.
Right.
I mean, I don't know what they can offer us, but I guess we'll find out.
Right,
And then we'll know what they offer, and then what they don't, we'll see where.
Yeah, because I think we have a formulated opinion, and we just want to have the council, advise us.
Okay.
which brings me to a question about the need for council to be at our meetings, I was confused by previous communication. What is in the bylaws in terms of our needing to, I mean, my understanding is that if we want council here, we request council. If they can be here, great. If they can't, they can't. That it's a matter of our initiation as opposed to a requirement that council here. Is that correct?
What we have historically done is, there were times when, Corporation Council was here and available whenever we had a meeting. And then there were times when they were not here. And we went on and discussed and went to executive session. You know, I think, and we can ask for clarification, but I think, you know, if we're going to be discussing case law in terms of, or legal precedent about, that's going to impact an individual's employment and life, that I would want legal counsel on that. So if we're gonna have a complaint that we're gonna be discussing and coming up with ideas or opinions on, either voting or not voting, you know, just, legal counsel would, I think, be advised.
Okay.
But
So it's a matter of advice, but it's not a requirement of, it's not written into law that council must be.
no,
present.
and it's also, as we had an outside counsel tell us, it's not written into law that we have to follow their recommendations.
Right,
However, I think we should. You know, I think if we're gonna have legal counsel,
yeah,
and we get legal counsel, I would want us not to ignore it.
no, I understand, and I'm simply asking what precedent has been, I just,
It's
again,
been variable.
that's,
And dependent, you know, when we're discussing tonight, we're not going into session, executive session. We are not discussing any cases or complaints.
right,
We're not doing any of that. We're discussing public knowledge and what the public, you know, can hear.
Sure.
It involves no specific personnel issues.
yeah, I mean, for the record, I am not at all opposed to having counsel here.
Yeah.
Right, when we
Yeah.
discuss law, absolutely,
Yeah, yeah.
it's valuable.
Yeah. So, you know, all of the points that have been discussed can be discussed with Nikon. And we can take it from there.
And Nikon stands for New York.
New York, I think it's Council on Nonprofits.
Okay.
And they get government funding to do the trainings. And then, you know, the city may have to pay for the training, but,
I just want to mention that I specifically asked about bringing in new members of the board because I am going to be away. And I don't know whether I'm supposed to take a leave or whether.
you're not here, you know, you don't leave and a temporary replacement comes in for you.
Or can I still get minutes and respond?
Yeah, the minutes are posted online.
Okay, so they will come to me.
Well, they're posted online.
Or
At the
I'll have a
city site.
computer.
You don't have a computer?
I will have a
Oh,
computer.
okay, yeah. You know, and the clerk's office has been a valuable resource in terms of how do you access it. So if you have any issues, they may be able to walk you right to it.
And you can email me, and if you can't access them,
So
I'll share it.
we've reached that point again where I think we've covered an awful lot. And to just review, because we reviewed before, but I may have forgotten. So I'm going to gather the information and start the development of an annual letter. Find out about the ethics training from Nikon, when that can be possible, or if it can be possible. And Corporation Council is in discussion with them. I'd call them, but Corporation Council is in discussion. and the city may be paying, so I think they're gonna handle that. And then contact of the older man at large, on what they want us to do.
Right.
Anything else?
And I think just clarification on this fifth person, we really need to, it's important, especially like again with Barbara being, needing to travel, any one of us could be in that situation, and we're at the bare bones minimum.
Well, we can ask the older man at large, they're
Yeah.
put on that.
Yeah, we really need to fill that position, so there needs to.
So if you have any questions, including that one, write them down so that when the alderman at large is here, or that we can ask them, or we can put something together to give them the majority of our questions beforehand, and they can answer them.
Yeah, could we do a meeting where we invite her to be here so that we can discuss our concerns?
We can, I don't know her availability, but,
I think that would maybe be the best, because then we can all be, we can share those minutes.
she's been
with
very
you.
approachable and.
But I
you know,
think
very
that these
supportive.
are concerns, so the importance of the work we like to do, but we do need support from them. Here's what we need clarification on this fifth position. We really could use a secretary,
So,
Well,
so will one of you, compile our questions?
I'll do that.
Good, I was hoping you would.
I was too.
Yeah, she's a delightful writer, so,
All right, I'll
her and
start.
Mike are my writers. And Mike is going to send the stuff some of the stuff for the annual report. We'll start on that. And,
Yeah, I'll send you the bullets.
is there if there's no other, discussion, is there a motion
Make a motion, we adjourn.
motion to adjourn?
Okay.
Second, all in favor?
Hi.
It's 5:23 and the Ethics Commission meeting is adjourned.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.